I died right under the building where Kinsu works. Still holding the rock sugar braised pork knuckle I'd stewed for him for 4 hours. A crowd slowly gathered around my mangled body. I saw Kinsu running over, pushing through the crowd to wrap his arms around another girl. He held her waist tightly, covering her eyes. "Baby, don't look. It might scare you." "I think I've seen her before," the girl in Kinsu's arms said, pulling his hand away and staring at my face. "That time we were eating, she came looking for you. She didn't say much before leaving." "What was her name?" The girl looked up innocently. Kinsu tilted his head, frowning slightly. His lips parted, but in the end, he never said my name. "Yes, what was my name? I don't think I ever had a real name that truly belonged to me." "I remember her." The girl in Kinsu's arms had a soft, sweet voice. She gently shook his wrist, lowering his hand. I stood beside the two of them, reaching out again and again to stop them from getting close, only to pull back each time in cowardice. Whether the first was alive or dead, I never dared disturb Kinsu, because he'd said if it happened one more time, he'd leave me for good, for God. Kinsu frowned, his eyes only on the girl. His fingertips trembled slightly. Every time he lied, it was like this. Hatred welled up inside me. I curled my lips into a smile and drifted around Kinsu and the girl with keen interest. I was waiting for Kinsu to become a lonely spirit like me. By then, I didn't believe he'd still be unable to say my name. I have many names. Grandma called me Guyer. My paternal grandma and dad called me Jinx. The villagers called me that unlucky thing. My mom called me, oh, I forgot. I didn't have a mother. If I had a mother, surely I'd have a proper, respectable name. The day Grandma brought me back from the hospital, the old dog at home had a litter of puppies. People in the village didn't usually name their animals. Cats were just cat, dogs were just dog. Since I appeared in the house the same day as the puppies, I was called Guyer Dog Girl. When a person dies, they become a wisp of a soul. That's what Grandma used to say when she was alive. Back then, Grandma was already paralyzed. The son she had coddled all her life never came to take care of her. Not even for a day. My aunt and cousins kept their distance too. They said Grandma could eat and relieve herself, but just wouldn't die. Every day, I washed Grandma's soiled pants, fed her and picked maggots out of her bed sores. Still, she'd pinch me. Her hands were like iron pincers. After each pinch, a purple welt would rise on my skin. My aunt secretly found me once and gave me 5 yuan, telling me to stop feeding Grandma. "If she dies, you'll suffer less." But I didn't want Grandma to die. Even though she pinched me when she was alive, at least I had a home. I pocketed the 5 yuan and told my aunt that the flour at home would only last for 2 more meals. If she didn't bring more by tomorrow morning, I'd do what I did last time, go beat a gong and curse at her doorstep. Her family couldn't afford the shame. My aunt gritted her teeth, cursed and left. I went back to washing Grandma's pants. Grandma was lying on the kang, screaming my name hoarsely. Her eyes as murky as the dirty water in the wash basin. She said, "Guyer, you should die before I do." Grandma hated me. My birth had cost her a daughter and, more importantly, the support from a son-in-law from the city. "Grandma," I wiped the dirty water from my hands onto my pants, sniffling. "What do you want to eat tonight?" Grandma tore a small, finely stitched cloth pouch from the undershirt she wore close to her skin and roughly stuffed it into my arms. She said, "If you don't want to die, then after I'm gone, go to the city and find your dad." I stayed silent. Grandma's lips twisted as she started crying. She said she wanted a bowl of hand-torn noodle soup with poached eggs, some pickled Chinese tuna and dried shrimp from the jar. "The pesticide bottles are in the west room. When you go get the flour, bring back a bottle. The one wrapped in green paper." I nodded, hung up the laundry, and headed to my aunt's house. Neither Grandma nor I could wait until tomorrow morning. My aunt's family was having dinner. Scrambled eggs lay golden and fragrant on a plate, the aroma mouth-watering. I carried a gong in my hand and told them what Grandma wanted to eat. "Your mother is quite the demanding one," my aunt spat, slamming down her chopsticks. My older cousin fed a mouthful of scrambled eggs to my younger cousin. They both smacked their lips, red tongues and white teeth churning the golden mess, making me nauseous. My uncle said nothing. He was always like this. He stayed silent when my aunt cursed Grandma, silent when Grandma dragged me out of the classroom, silent when my cousins hid me, silent even when I stood at his doorstep beating the gong and hurling curses. "Get it yourself." My aunt was still furious. She stood at the doorway, bowl in hand, eating while watching me, like an owl perched on a branch at night, chewing a dead mouse while glaring intently. I really just wanted to scoop a bowl of flour, but that wouldn't hide the green-wrapped pesticide bottle. No choice, I stood in front of the flour sack, trying different amounts, adding more, then scooping some back. My aunt gave me 5 yuan. In exchange, I got 2 eggs, some pickled Chinese tuna, and dried shrimp. 3 days later, Grandma's funeral was held. I knelt before the coffin, kowtowing, listening to my uncle and aunt drag out their wails. My aunt even banged her head against the coffin, demanding to know why Grandma had to take her own grandson with her. I lowered my body, hiding from view, and smiled with pure joy. The first time I met Kinsu was at my paternal grandmother's doorstep. The Kin family lived next door to my grandma. His grandma was a high school teacher. Someone was home at my grandma's, but no matter how long I knocked, no one opened the door. Kinsu peeked out. He was the cleanest boy I'd ever seen, like the moon on the horizon, or the sparkling stars in the night sky. "Who are you looking for?" That was the first thing Kinsu ever said to me. Then, he handed me a red bean popsicle. Kinsu ran out of his own house and gently knocked on my grandma's door. He said, "Grandma Zhang, you have a visitor." Finally, the door opened. I nibbled the red bean popsicle as a stern-faced old woman stood in the doorway. She first patted Kinsu's head, then glared at me, gritting her teeth, and spat in my face. "Jinx. Who told you to come?" "My grandma died." "She should have died long ago. Why didn't you die with her?" I lowered my head, looking at my toes. A big toe stained with blood poked out of my shoe, half a split toenail glaringly red, throbbing with pain. "Hey, your name is Jinx?" Kinsu tilted his head and asked. I shook my head, my face flushing red for the first time in my life. My name was Guyer. That wasn't a nice name either. I was afraid of dirtying Kinsu's ears. Kinsu was pulled back inside by his grandma. My grandma, afraid of losing face for her family, finally dragged me inside. From then on, I lived at my paternal grandma's house. Half a year later, my dad registered my household registration. The name on it was Zhanggu. "Mom, there's no other way." Thankfully, it's the factory's primary school. Won't cost much. Besides, she's not little anymore. After a few years of schooling, we can send her out to work, earn money to support you. I mechanically scrubbed the pants in my hands, listening to my dad try to persuade Grandma. Grandma was still cursing under her breath. I knew why she was angry. Right before I arrived, someone had tried to set my dad up on a blind date. My arrival ruined it. But I still had to go to school, otherwise the family's reputation would be even worse. As I was wondering how long I'd have to sit in the bathroom, someone knocked on the door. It was Kinsu. He came to ask me over to help his grandma sew a quilt. I quickly turned on the faucet, scrubbing my hands until I couldn't smell even a hint of urine before stepping out of the bathroom. "Our quilt was done ages ago. I called you over to have some fruit." Only after I entered Kinsu's house and after his grandma brought out the fruit did Kinsu grin and tell the truth. Grandma Kin ruffled my hair and applied medicine to my split fingernail. She said I was pitiful, told me to study hard. If I could get into university in the future, I could leave home and have my own path. "We're in the same class," Kinsu said, sitting beside me with a smile. "Don't worry, I'll take care of you." Back then, Kinsu was still young and so was I. A child's offhand remark, he took it seriously. But only for a few years. I, however, took it seriously for a lifetime. My soul drifted along, following my body to the funeral parlor. My dad was summoned. His wife clung to his arm, his daughter frowned, chewing gum. It had been years since I'd seen my dad. After Grandma had a stroke and became paralyzed, he hastily moved out, leaving me to take care of her. "You have experience. You were the one who looked after your maternal grandma until she passed." He said that in front of my grandma. At the time, Grandma said nothing. Only after he left did she shed tears. Back then, I was just starting high school, still in the same class as Kinsu. I wasn't a good student, and the family wasn't willing to pay. The only reason I could attend high school was because of Grandma Kin. The upright old lady, who had lived a principled life, pleaded with the principal on my behalf, securing me a tuition-free spot. Grandma Kin said she would cover my tuition. After she sighed and left, I knelt by my grandma's bedside and swore to her that I would study during the day and come back at night to take care of her diligently. I begged her to agree. "Are you doing this to study? Or for Kinsu?" Grandma's eyes were starting to turn cloudy too. She asked me with a cold sneer. Of course, it was for Kinsu. I wasn't clever and didn't really like studying. In the years I went to school with Kinsu, I took care of his daily needs. He did my homework, and he stood up for me when classmates bullied me. We were always desk mates, even though the teacher tried countless times to separate us, saying I would affect Kinsu's grades. "Zhanggu won't affect me," a rapidly growing Kinsu would say, standing by the lectern, lifting his chin to argue with the teacher. The teacher would finally shake his head helplessly. Kinsu would walk back proudly and pat my head. "I told you, I'd take care of you." Back then, I'd held my head high, glancing smugly at the girls in class. What good did it do them to dress up every day and come to Kinsu with their homework? Kinsu only cared about me. At night, while I happily covered Kinsu's textbooks, Grandma leaned against the headboard, cursing viciously. "Jinx, you're just like your mother. Can't live without a man." I didn't care. Grandma always cursed. My mom cursed her for being shameless and seducing my dad, Cursed her for being a clingy ghost. Afraid my dad would leave her, so she got pregnant before marriage. Cursed her for acting recklessly even while pregnant, following my dad to and from work every day. Finally getting into a fight with him at the factory gate and bleeding nonstop. That's why my mom died in childbirth. I heard I was in danger too, needed emergency care. My grandma and dad refused to pay. In the end, my maternal grandma decided to take me home. Jinx, if you don't straighten up, sooner or later you'll end up like your mom. Face retribution. Grandma slapped the bed, cursing. She'd wet herself again. The whole room reeked of urine. I let Grandma curse, my hands never stopping. I had to finish covering Kinsu's textbooks before cleaning up Grandma. Kinsu was so clean, his books couldn't be tainted with the smell of urine. That's how I was. In everything, Kinsu came first. High school life was stifling and hard. I wasn't good at studying, clung to Kinsu all day. My classmates gave me a nickname, saying I should be called Zhanggu Zhangdog, the lapdog always trailing behind Kinsu. I still didn't care. I'd hug Kinsu's backpack and school jacket, watching happily as he fought for me. Then I'd drag him to the milk tea shop by the school gate to apply medicine. Kinsu would buy me my favorite milk tea, then hold my hand, seriously telling me not to tell his grandma. Feeling the warmth of his hand, I'd look at Kinsu, my eyes crinkling into smiles. I like you, Kinsu, and I said it at the same time. He blushed, I didn't. What was there to be ashamed of liking him? I'd liked him since the first moment I saw him. Kinsu and I started dating. From then on, my eyes and heart were filled with him. Before, my life seemed to have been just about studying. Now, Kinsu had squeezed his way in, occupying every nook and cranny. Kinsu's grades remained consistently good. Occasionally, when he saw me not paying attention in class but staring endlessly at his face instead, he blushed and pinched my hand under the desk as a warning. I'd giggle and ask him what he wanted for lunch. Kinsu wouldn't answer. He'd look at the blackboard, frowning in thought, concentrating on his studies. Actually, I knew Kinsu loved pork knuckles the most. The cafeteria had a daily limited supply, but I just wanted to talk to him, so I raised my voice and kept asking. Classmates started snickering. Someone said, the lapdog's at it again. Once Kinsu finishes a knuckle, the lapdog can gnaw on the bone. The teacher kicked me out. I leaned against the doorway and shouted for Kinsu to pay attention in class, that I'd go buy him a pork knuckle from the cafeteria. Kinsu's frown deepened. He didn't turn around. Maybe from that moment on, Kinsu had already begun to tire of me. It's just that young love was too passionate, little annoyances and displeasures would quickly pass. I floated lightly around the coffin a few times. I thought Kinsu would come soon, but he didn't. The staff had my dad sign many documents for cremation, for ashes placement. My dad said my mom's ashes were still here and wanted to place mine next to hers. His wife tugged at him, thinking it would be a hassle to come pay respects to me every year. How funny. All these years, I'd never heard of my dad coming to pay respects to my mom either. My dad hesitated for a long time but finally decided to store my ashes for 1 year. After 1 year, the funeral home could dispose of my mom's and my ashes however they saw fit. I finally saw my mom. I looked a lot like her, especially the eye stubborn and unyielding. My dad placed my ashes box next to my mom's. He wiped the dust off my mom's photo with his hand, and his eyes actually welled up with tears. This child, she's just as stubborn as you. Why did she fixate on Kinsu? Kinsu is already engaged and she still wouldn't let go. Engaged? I panicked. Something flashed through my mind rapidly. Even though I was just a soul now, I felt a heart-shattering pain. How could Kinsu be engaged to whom? To that girl? No, impossible. Kinsu wouldn't abandon me. Just today, he said he wanted pork knuckles. Otherwise, I wouldn't have spent hours stewing them and carrying them all the way to him, cradled in my arms. My dad was lying. Furious, I drifted over, wanting to grab my dad's collar to make him admit he was lying, or rather, lying to ghosts, since both my mom and I were dead. Wait, how did I die? Oh, right. Kinsu wanted rock sugar braised pork knuckles. I went to the market, carefully selected them, came home and stewed them slowly over low heat. I changed into the white dress Kinsu had given me, picked up the knuckles, and went to find him. I had always brought Kinsu food like this from high school, to university, to his work, and until his engagement. I dropped out of high school, didn't pass the graduation exams. My high subject score was in the 40s. The teacher patted my head and said it was a shame, that it would have been so much better if I had put all my heart into studying. I didn't think so. My life didn't need good grades, it just needed Kinsu. Kinsu got into the top-tier class. We could no longer be together every day. I worked at the milk tea shop by the school gate. Every night before closing, I'd make Kinsu an extra special cup. Kinsu would wait for me at the milk tea shop after school. I'd reserve a separate table for him. He'd do his homework there while I made milk tea. After all the customers left, Kinsu and I would go home together. Goo. Kinsu handed me his half-finished milk tea. You drink it. I've had enough during the day. I waved my hand. I wasn't worthy. Only Kinsu deserved such good milk tea. Kinsu took my hand with the same hand that had just held the milk tea. He always said my hands were cold and his were warm. He said he'd warm my hands for a lifetime. My heart swelled with joy. Carrying Kinsu's backpack, I felt his fingers tracing my palm and fingers. Why are they so rough? Kinsu murmured softly. I blushed and quickly pulled my hand back. During the day at the milk tea shop, cutting fruit, mixing tea powder, I'd get hurt on my hands if I wasn't careful. At night, I had to wash the clothes and pants soiled with my grandma's waste. Occasionally, I had to strip and wash the bedding. Grandma wouldn't let me use hot water. Actually, the water heater at home had been broken for a long time. No one cared. The money I had left was saved to buy snacks for Kinsu. He had recently become obsessed with spicy beef jerky, 170 yuan per jin. To save money, I skipped lunch and gritted my teeth through cold showers. But every day, I could give Kinsu a pack of spicy beef jerky and an extra special milk tea. Every weekend, I could also send him a rock sugar braised pork knuckle, rich with oil and soy sauce. Goo. Wait until I get into university. We'll leave together. Kinsu sniffled. Even though I never said anything, I think he knew my hardships, okay? I tightly grasped Kinsu's hand, promising him. I thought then, I'd accompany him, rent a small room, work during the day, cook for him in the kitchen at night, and stew pork knuckles for him on weekends. That would be our own little home. Finally, I would have a home. After seeing my mom, my dad went to see my grandma. Grandma's ashes box was stored in the most expensive spot in the funeral home. In the most expensive box. I remember my dad crying his heart out at Grandma's bedside back then. Everyone said my dad was a filial son, while I, the granddaughter who had taken care of Grandma for years, who had held her in her final moments, combed her hair, and changed her clothes, was an unfilial daughter. Because I didn't cry, I was even secretly delighted. Kinsu's university admission letter had arrived the day before. Once Grandma's funeral was over, I would go with him to the city by the sea. The filial son in the room continued his wailing. Relatives and friends inside were noisy and chaotic. I threw away the hard-to-obtain, green-wrapped pesticide bottle. Grandma. I poisoned her. I had to stay with Kinsu. If Grandma were still alive, how could I leave? Goo, this will be our home from now on. Kinsu's words echoed in my ears again. That was right after he returned from university registration. I had already tittied up the rented room and was stewing pork knuckles for him in the kitchen. Kinsu came home, hugged me from behind, kissed my ear and said those words. Before this, our relationship had been chaste and proper. This was the first time we'd been so intimate. Kinsu carried me back to the room. He said he had a gift for me. A white dress. Kinsu helped me put it on and praised my beauty. I twirled happily in front of the mirror, then hugged him, gently unbuttoning his shirt. I have forgotten Grandma Kin's words before I came. She had taken my hand, her gaze sharp. She said, Goo, you're a good child. She said, Goo, you can't cling to Kinsu forever. You need to have your own life. She said, Goo, why won't you listen? Why are you so confused? I wasn't confused. I loved Kinsu. He was the only warmth, the only light in my life. He was my faith, my deity. When people make offerings to gods, don't they have to sacrifice something? I had nothing, so I could only sacrifice myself. Kinsu and I were officially together. He went to school. He prepared for graduate school entrance exams. I worked at a supermarket. When he graduated, he hesitated between staying at the university or going to a big company. I came home from work, carrying the freshly bought pork knuckles, opened the door, and saw him sitting on our sofa with a woman. On the floor lay the cushion I had made myself. Is this your girlfriend? The woman didn't get up. Even though I was standing and she was sitting under her gaze, I felt much smaller. Yes, my girlfriend, Zhanggu. Goo, this is Sister Gao. Kinsu took the things from my hand and placed them on the floor, pulling me over to introduce me to Sister Gao. There was a barely noticeable hesitation in his tone. I could hear it and presumably Sister Gao could too. Hello. Sister Gao extended her hand but quickly frowned and withdrew it. I pursed my lips. The supermarket was being renovated, and I had been busy moving goods before getting off work. My hands got dirty, and I hadn't had time to wash them. Just now at the market picking pork knuckles, I was used to selecting them by hand. That's how you get the best ones. Now my hands were dirty and smelled of raw pork. No wonder she didn't want to touch me. Kinsu grasped my hand, just as I was trying to hide it behind my back. He spoke to Sister Gao with ease, saying I was a good cook, his capable helper at home. He even enthusiastically invited Sister Gao to try my cooking, but Sister Gao declined, saying she didn't eat pork. About the job, I advise you to reconsider. Man strives upwards, you should understand this principle. Sister Gao didn't stay for dinner. When Sister Gao spoke, she wasn't looking at Kinsu, but at me. I understood her meaning. Kinsu was a graduate student now with a bright future ahead. I wasn't good enough for him anymore. Don't think nonsense. At dinner, Kinsu put a big piece of pork knuckle into his mouth. My Gugu is the best girl in the whole world, my future wife. I went to hit him, but he caught my hand instead, planting an oily kiss on my palm. Wife, as long as you make pork knuckles for your husband for the rest of your life, you'll always be the fairy in my heart. I looked at Kinsu and swallowed the words I wanted to say. Back then, I was actually quite calm. I thought that if I was holding Kinsu back, I'd let him tell everyone I was just his younger sister. I didn't care about status, money. I only wanted Kinsu. My soul drifted around the funeral home, waiting for Kinsu to come take me home. Souls aren't as fragile as Grandma said. I could move in sunlight, just without leaving a shadow. I was a bit angry with Kinsu. Why hadn't he come to find me for so long? Until, on the 7th day after my death, my dad hurried over with offerings, going through the motions perfunctorily. I drifted around him and saw a bright red wedding invitation tucked inside his open jacket. Kinsu was getting married. I died and Kinsu was getting married. There must be some mistake. It must be someone with the same name. Or maybe, Kinsu was going to marry me. Yes, that must be it. Kinsu said we would be together in this life, in death and in life. That's what he said when I called him after walking out of the maternity hospital. He also said back then, Gugu, the conditions aren't right now. Your health isn't great, and I haven't quit smoking or drinking. Gugu will have another child in the future. Be good, don't be sad. What if you don't want me in the future? I leaned weakly against the wall. The tiled wall chilled me, making me shiver. My lower abdomen still felt like it was being sliced open. I hadn't opted for pain relief, partly to save some money for a suit for Kinsu, and partly because I deserved the pain who told me to give up my child's life. Silly Gugu. How could I not want you? In this life we'll be together in death and in life. Gugu, I swear if I ever leave you in the future, I'll suffer retribution. For those words, I turned back into the hospital, sat down in front of the head of gynecology, and asked her when I could get an IUD. The head gynecologist's face turned livid with anger. She said I had no self-respect and chased me out. A nurse ran after me and handed me a handful of contraceptives, but I shook my head and refused. Kinsu didn't like those things. He liked to possess me completely, without any barriers. How could I bear to let him feel wronged? I wanted to go home first. For a wedding, the new home surely needed decorating. I was dead, Kinsu was clumsy. I was afraid he wouldn't do it well. Actually, I didn't care about any of that. I just felt sorry for him. Kinsu had always been particular about rituals. He'd buy me flowers on Valentine's Day, and give me gifts on my birthday. Speaking of which, I never actually knew what day I was born. Grandma never told me when she was alive, and my dad made one up when registering my household registration. The birthday I celebrated now was actually Kinsu's birthday. He said all the wrongs I suffered back then, he would now compensate me for doubly with his affection. That was the first year we were truly together, the day of my rebirth. I chose Kinsu's birthday. Originally, I had nothing. He was my everything. I followed in his footsteps. So let us celebrate our birthdays on the same day. When we were white-haired, when we had children and grandchildren, he could still hold my hand and say to me, "Happy birthday to us." I returned to the rented room, passing through the wall without needing to open the door. This was good too, I thought. From now on, I'd just follow Kinsu like this. That way, he'd never find me annoying again, and others wouldn't think I was bothering him either. The rented room was awash in red. On the walls, windows, mirrors everywhere were the double happiness characters I had cut out and pasted myself. The bed was covered with a bright red bedding set, and there was a pair of newlywed dolls that could nod their heads. I remembered now. I had decorated it this way on the very day of the accident. That day, I sat on the floor at home, humming as I cut out the double happiness characters. The pork knuckles were stewing in the kitchen, emitting a rich aroma. As I cut, I started crying, but I can't remember now why I cried. Was I too happy? Or did the scissors poke my hand? The scissors were still on the floor now, next to a patch of dark red, dry bloodstain. I hugged my knees and crouched beside the bloodstain, unable to remember how I had injured myself back then. Looking around the room, a thin layer of dust had already settled on the table surfaces. This would have been impossible before I died. Kinsu had allergic rhinitis. I kept the house spotless. All these years, I never even kept cats or dogs, afraid they'd make his nose uncomfortable. I was dead. Now there was no one to take care of Kinsu. I leaned over the table and blew hard, but a soul couldn't bring even a wisp of wind. The dust remained on the table, as if mocking my incompetence. What should I do? I rushed into the kitchen to get a rag. The kitchen was filthy beyond belief. I saw pork knuckles on the dining table, the stove, the sink everywhere. Raw, cooked, roasted, braised. The most, of course, were the rock sugar flavor Kinsu loved, plates piled high with them. Glistening with dark oil and soy sauce, those pork knuckles had all gone bad, covered in mold. Just like my love with Kinsu. I drifted in the kitchen, voices echoing in my mind. First, it was Kinsu speaking. His pleasant voice carried impatience. He said, "Don't come pick me up at the company. I'll come home by myself after work." He said, "Gugu, I'm a grown man. I can't revolve only around you. I have my own circle of friends." He said, "I won't be back for dinner today. You don't always have to make the same thing. I'm tired of it." He said, "Zhanggu, why are you so incessant?" He said, "Zhanggu, can't you have your own life?" But ever since I met him, fell in love with him, gave myself to him, I hadn't had a self anymore. My life was only Kinsu. I couldn't leave him. And he could never, ever leave me either. I didn't wait for Kinsu at home this time, even though I used to always wait for him there. From waiting a whole day at first to waiting a week later, then 10 days, half a month, I went to his company. Anyway, no one could see me now. I had been there before. Kinsu had taken my hand, led me into the company with its gleaming floors, into the transparent elevator, straight to his office. He introduced me to his colleagues, his subordinates, saying I was his beloved. On me was that white dress, washed countless times, already a bit yellowed. The back zipper had come off and I'd sewn it back on. But it wasn't new anymore, the zipper was crooked. I'd struggled a lot to put it on today too. The initial joy and confidence vanished without a trace the moment I saw his colleagues. I tugged at my dress, trying to smooth it as much as possible. The girls in Kinsu's office were all clean and pretty. They walked briskly, their high heels clicking with purpose. None of them wore a dress like mine, they were in sharp suits, sprinkling English words in their conversations. I'd been to high school too, my English grades were once quite good. But those words had faded away with the daily washing and cooking. Now, I couldn't understand a single one. I opened the thermal container in Kinsu's office. Inside was a carefully stewed pork knuckle. Kinsu only took one bite. He frowned slightly, seemed about to say something, but didn't. I grew even more nervous, asking him if it wasn't good. Actually, I wanted to ask more. "Are you tired of it?" Someone knocked on the office door. It was Kinsu's secretary, bringing the company lunch. She had kindly brought a portion for me too. That lunch looked good but didn't taste great. Lukewarm, barely cooked vegetables, bland chicken breast, cheese I wasn't used to, coffee I couldn't swallow. How could it compare to my pork knuckle? But Kinsu ate it happily and told me to eat quickly too. "You've been eating this lately?" I asked. Kinsu nodded. He said it was the company's standard lunch, a specialty from a nearby restaurant. Low oil, low fat, low calorie, very healthy. "Gugu, you need to change your cooking habits." Kinsu ate while looking at his computer. "I had a physical recently. My blood lipids are a bit high. Don't make pork knuckles anymore, and don't bring me food. I'll eat at the company." I forgot how I left Kinsu's company that day. Just like now, I forgot why I decorated the new home, how I stabbed myself with scissors, and why I was so wasteful making so many pork knuckles. I drifted into my memory, into Kinsu's office, only to find someone else there now. It was the girl Kinsu had held in his arms the day I died. Now she wore gold-rimmed glasses, her eyes fixed intently on the computer screen. I watched her quietly, and noticed she had many little habits identical to Kinsu's. For example, she drank water in small sips, unlike me, who always gulped it down in big mouthfuls. For example, she resisted the urge to lick her lips, taking out lip balm instead. I remember Kinsu giving me a lip balm after I found a clearly used one in his suit pocket. "My lips have been dry lately. Don't keep licking your lips or picking at the dead skin. I'll buy you one later. Remember to use it." Kinsu looked at his phone, calmly responding to my questions. Now, watching the girl apply lip balm, I realized her lipstick shade was exactly the same as the one staining the lip balm in Kinsu's suit pocket. I was furious, jealous. I lunged at the girl, but my efforts were futile as I passed right through her body. She felt nothing, typing on her keyboard with focus until the phone rang. "Hello." The girl smiled happily as she answered. I recognized the voice on the other end. It was Kinsu. "Wait, I'm busy." "Put it on speaker." The girl casually pressed the speaker button and placed the phone aside. How could she? That was Kinsu's call, and she was still typing, not even listening properly. "Whoa, the date is set, but you still haven't tried on your wedding dress." Kinsu's voice was light, carrying a hint of grievance. "Oh, I forgot." Whoa said that, but she didn't stop working. "Really, we're about to get our marriage certificate, and I still haven't seen my wife in a wedding dress." Kinsu was complaining. His wife? Wasn't I his wife? All right, don't disturb me. This proposal is very important to me, you know. Wolwo frowned slightly. I could tell she wasn't just being coquettish. She genuinely felt Kinsu was interrupting her. Okay. Then I'll wait for you to get off work and we'll have dinner together. I might have to work overtime. You go ahead. It's fine. I'll wait in your office. Kinsu, we agreed not to interfere with each other at work. Don't come to my office. If you really must wait for me in the parking lot, okay? Wolwo hung up and went back to work, while I was utterly shocked. How could she treat Kinsu like this? How could she bear to make Kinsu wait? And in the parking lot, no less. I didn't want to go find Kinsu for now. There was a fascinating power about Wolwo. I wanted to watch a bit more to see her life. Quitting time arrived. Wolwo finished her work but didn't rush to leave. I watched her turn off the computer, take off her glasses and frown. After a long while, she made a call. Yes, right now. I don't want to get married. That incident 7 days ago. I always feel something's off. And I suspect people in the company know. I arrive later and they naturally have closer relationships, so no one told me. Fortunately, we haven't gotten the certificate yet. Then, I'll trouble you to help me investigate. So, it was her who was going to marry Kinsu. She said she remembered me, but I couldn't remember who she was at all. Yet I remembered the incident she mentioned because that was the last time I went to find Kinsu. I wanted Kinsu to come home with me, but he said, Gugu, we've broken up. Thinking of this, I realized that souls can feel pain too. I lowered my head to look at myself. In my soul form, I was still wearing that long-worn white dress. So, only I was left stuck in the memories. Only I treated my love with Kinsu as my life and my all. He had long abandoned me, found a new, more suitable partner. While I still clung stubbornly to the past, refusing to let go. I remembered now how I died. And I remembered what the room full of double happiness characters was about. I knew Kinsu was getting married. He could only marry me. He was busy. So I decorated the new home myself. He was tired of pork knuckles. So I tried different cooking methods. Now, I wanted to go see Kinsu. He must miss me a little, feel a bit sad and reluctant, right? After being rejected by Wolwo, he would remember Zhonggu, who never refused him. Kinsu was smoking in the car. On the passenger seat was a gift box bought for Wolwo. He held a phone in his hand. On the screen was my photo. I was ecstatic. Kinsu was thinking of me after all. Kinsu stubbed out the cigarette. He began deleting the photos, one by one. I watched myself disappear from his phone again and again, until no trace of me remained. Kinsu made a call to the landlord. He apologized to the landlord, said he hadn't expected me to be like this. He said I was sick, obsessive, and he couldn't help it. He transferred some money to the landlord, calling a compensation for the cleaning fee. When the landlord asked if he wanted to keep the things in the room, he paused, then said, burn them all. It just so happens today is the 7th day after her death. I slipped into the car, sat in the passenger seat, and stared at Kinsu's profile. 7 days ago, I put the most satisfying pork knuckle I'd ever made into a thermal container. Hesitating for a moment, I took out a green-wrapped plastic bottle hidden deep in the cabinet. It was newly bought, the seller guaranteeing its effectiveness was as potent as before. I carefully added the liquid from the bottle into the thermal container, put on that white dress, and went to the building where Kinsu worked. He didn't answer my calls, so I stubbornly waited downstairs until I saw Kinsu's secretary. She was holding a big red wedding invitation, chatting softly with someone. Manager Kin broke up with that girl long ago. I've seen her before. Looks wise, she's okay, just provincial. Dresses shabbily too. No, his fiancée doesn't know about this. That girl hasn't come for a long time. They should have broken it off cleanly. I stood in the sunlight, looking at my own shadow, then at my reflection in the company's glass doors. A shabby, worn-out white dress. Provincial. Those words weren't just said by Kinsu's secretary. Kinsu had said them when we broke up. So, he hadn't just said them to me. He told many people. I unscrewed the lid of the thermal container. Using my hands, I grabbed the scalding hot rock sugar pork knuckle and stuffed it into my mouth in big mouthfuls. My stomach began to ache as if being sliced open. Worse than the pain during the surgery at the maternity hospital. That was my retribution. I collapsed on the roadway, was hit by a car, thrown up and landed. My body was shattered and filthy. I didn't even want to look at it myself, only watching silently from behind the crowd as my body was taken away by the vehicle. I had sent off grandma, sent off my little cousin from my uncle's family, sent off my paternal grandma, sent off my child. Now, I sent off myself. I sent off the Zhonggu who loved Kinsu, sent off Guyer who ended up utterly alone, sent off my love and everything. Ghosts can cry too. I watched as Kinsu looked at his finger in surprise, where the drops of water had suddenly appeared. He seemed to sense something, turning his head left and right, but seeing nothing. Perhaps out of guilt, Kinsu dialed the landlord's number again in front of me. He murmured that he wanted to keep something, to remember the girl who had loved him with her life. The landlord's call didn't go through. I heard Kinsu sigh. He said, "Let it be." He hadn't wronged anyone, it was Zhanggu who was too obsessive. So, that's what he thought. Kinsu, unable to wait for Wolwo, stepped out of the parking lot. I was still by his side, watching him torn between going upstairs to find Wolwo and waiting. It was a cautious side of him I had never seen before. When you truly love someone, you fear making them angry. But before, Kinsu had never feared my anger. I was too cheap, letting him summon me at will and shoo me away as he pleased. What comes too easily is never cherished. It's a pity I hadn't understood that before. Kinsu continued wandering until he saw the packaging box in the trash bin. Beside the company reception desk, the familiar ribbon knot, he recognized it at a glance as my handiwork. Before I left the house carrying the thermal container, I had indeed sent Kinsu something by express delivery. By timing, the delivery arrived before me. But when I got on the car, the courier told me Kinsu had notified the front desk to refuse it. I hadn't expected it to still be here. Kinsu hesitated by the trash bin for a long time, looking at the soiled gift box. His brows were tightly knit, a sign he was about to get angry. Perhaps Sawolu's long wait made him, in his disappointment, feel some regret about me. Or perhaps, since the landlord hadn't answered, he wanted to keep this express package as a memento. After making sure no one was around, Kinsu retrieved the gift box. He stood at the front desk, frowning as he opened it, tearing and discarding the card on top. I shook my head and sighed. Kinsu, you treat me so carelessly. You will face retribution. Inside the box was Kinsu's high school uniform. The right sleeve had an ugly, winding suture mark like a centipede. Kinsu's frown deepened. I knew he remembered. That was the uniform torn when he fought for me in high school. You're always like this. Kinsu suddenly spoke. I thought he saw me. After a moment of fleeting joy, I realized he was just talking to himself, sending me the uniform, trying to make me recall the past. Kinsu sneered. I only regret it. If I hadn't opened the door that day, meddling in other people's business, I wouldn't have been entangled by you for so long. My soul trembled. Kinsu's words were harder than knives. I wailed before him, loudly demanding why he had become like this. A soul's voice cannot be heard by the living. I watched as Kinsu cursed, grabbed the uniform, and made a move to throw it back into the trash. I smiled. Kinsu, you shouldn't have treated me like this. You said you'd face retribution if you wronged me. Now, it's your retribution. Kinsu's palm was pierced by something sharp. Blood instantly gushed out, staining the uniform. I threw my head back and laughed silently. If Kinsu had picked up that uniform properly, if he had still cherished our past, or even if he had just pitied me and not trampled on my love, he would have seen the knife wrapped inside the uniform, soaked in pesticide. Kinsu clutched his hand, howling and writhing on the smooth marble floor tiles. I laughed soundlessly. I personally chose the pesticide, specifically picking one with long-lasting effects. The kind that causes the most painful physical reactions after poisoning. Kinsu, do you know, this pain isn't even 1/10,000th of what I endured. Soon, you'll also experience that cold operating table in the hospital. You'll be poked and prodded by various cold instruments, feeling the agony of wanting to die yet unwilling to give in, like ants gnawing at your heart. Now it's your turn to taste it. Unexpectedly, Kinsu didn't even last until the ambulance arrived. He breathed out his last warm breath. I drifted away before his soul left his body. I didn't want to see him again. As a human, I didn't have time. As a ghost, I must break up with him first. Passing through layers of floors, I exposed myself to the blood-red sunset. But my soul did not die. But eventually, it will pass. I will eventually dissipate. Just like after I died. I never saw my mom, grandma, my cousin, my paternal grandma, or my child. On the 1-year anniversary, the box containing my ashes and my mom's was taken down from the shelf. With my dad came Grandma Kin and Kinsu's parents. Grandma Kin, bent over with effort, laboriously took Kinsu's ashes box from the shelf. Kinsu's mother covered her face with a handkerchief, weeping softly. I saw Kinsu's soul hovering around his parents and grandma. He seemed to have accepted his death, not roaring and chasing me everywhere to hide like he did before. My dad had long signed the agreement to relinquish the ashes, handing over the ashes of us mother and daughter to the funeral home for disposal. He had neither the energy nor the mind to deal with this now. His second wife had cheated on him. He wanted to salvage the marriage but couldn't swallow the humiliation. Under days and nights of anger and resentment, his liver gave out, and cancer cells were eating away at his body. His second wife and her new lover had long planned it out. Not divorcing was only for the sake of my dad's meager assets. Before long, there would be another cheap ashes box here, another unwilling soul. Every year, a portion of ashes is handled this way. The funeral home uniformly opens these ashes boxes. The ashes are either buried underground or scattered into rivers and seas. Every soul will gain freedom, including me, the girl who was briefly loved, Grandma's Guyer, Kinsu's former lover, Zhanggu. As for Kinsu, his ashes box will remain in the funeral home for a very, very long time. As long as his ashes remain, he will never, ever gain freedom. The end.